The arrival of the survey ship alien ship Jilter 7 drifted silently above Earth, hidden behind the shadow of the moon. It wasn't large, just a scout vessel, shaped like a black arrowhead, but every panel on its surface hummed with ancient technology. Inside, everything was silent except for the soft beeping of data screens and the low voices of the alien crew. Commander Vrol, a tall and sharp-eyed creature from the planet Ulzar, stood at the front of the observation deck. His skin shimmered with faint silver lines that moved with his thoughts. He had visited over 12,000 planets in his career, scanning worlds for life, danger, and potential contact, but never before had he seen anything like Earth. His second-in-command, Riltek, stared at the data with wide eyes. "Sir," he said slowly, "I don't understand. The readings, they don't make sense." Vrol didn't answer right away. He stepped closer to the large display in front of him. The rotating image of Earth spun slowly, green, blue, white, peaceful, from a distance. But the ship's sensors told a different story. "Explain it," Vrol said, his voice low and calm. Riltek pointed to the holographic data. Class 15 environmental threats, atmospheric toxins, nuclear radiation still present from past wars. The apex species is violent, territorial, and unpredictable. They wage war on each other, poison their own water, and destroy forests even when it costs them survival. He paused and tilted his head. But then we have this. A new screen opened beside the first. Images and videos collected from the planet's surface flashed by humans holding hands after earthquakes, singing together in public, building rockets, helping animals, curing diseases, and writing poetry under bombed-out rooftops. They create beauty in chaos, Riltek whispered. Vrol narrowed his eyes. "That is what makes them dangerous." There was a long silence on the bridge. "They are not stable," said Dr. Anar, the ship's biologist, who had just entered the room, "and yet they evolve faster than any species I've seen. Their bodies are fragile, but their minds burn like stars." Vrol didn't move. He continued to stare at Earth. "What are they?" Dr. Anar exhaled. "We don't know yet, but if the reports are correct, they are the only known race to rise from extinction-level threats not once, but several times. Volcanoes, ice ages, plagues, wars. They should have died, but they keep standing, every time." Riltek added, "Sir, I reviewed the last 200 years of data. These humans created weapons strong enough to end all life, and then created art in the same breath. They mourn their own cruelty while celebrating their progress. One nation drops bombs, while another builds hospitals for strangers. Madness," whispered someone from the crew. "No," Vrol said finally, "it is something worse than madness. It is potential." There was a buzz at the edge of the room as a young technician walked in. "Commander," he said nervously, "I think we should leave." "Before they see us," Vrol turned. "They are pre-warp species. They can't detect us." The technician gulped. "Yes, sir. But a few minutes ago, one of our satellites picked up a strange image from the surface. A child no older than 10 looked directly at our sky drone. The image shows her pointing right at us." The room went silent. Dr. Anar frowned. "Coincidence? No energy weapon was used. No radar," the technician added. But the child looked through the clouds and smiled. Riltek stepped forward. "Commander, what do we do now?" Vrol stared at the planet again. "Log the classification," he said quietly. "This world is officially labeled as both a Class 15 death trap and a cradle of proto-gods." The crew didn't argue. No one laughed, because they all knew Earth was not just another dangerous planet. It was something ancient, something unknown. It had created life forms that could destroy galaxies or uplift them. As the ship slowly rotated to the dark side of Earth, the crew watched news feeds from across the globe. One clip showed humans fighting in streets. Another showed a scientist inventing clean water for villages. A soldier carried a baby to safety while, miles away, bombs fell from the sky. Riltek whispered, "How can they be both monsters and miracles?" Vrol finally turned from the window. "Because they haven't chosen yet. The DNA discovery, that changed everything deep inside the science chamber of the alien scout ship Jiltor 7. The walls pulsed softly with blue light. The room was cold and quiet, filled with floating screens and whispering machines. Dr. Enner, the chief biologist, stood in the center of it all, his furlong fingers twitching nervously as he stared at the swirling structure of human DNA. Floating in front of him, He had been studying life forms across the galaxy for nearly 300 years. He had mapped the nervous systems of creatures made of gas, tracked the bloodstreams of silicon-based organisms, and even observed a species that lived inside neutron stars. But nothing prepared him for what he found inside human cells. Impossible, he muttered under his breath, eyes locked on a glowing strand. The DNA was chaotic, messy in a way that no intelligent species should have survived. Mutations everywhere, broken genes, ancient viruses still hiding in the corners of chromosomes like sleeping ghosts. It looked more like a battlefield than a blueprint. But then, there was something else, something new in the center of the chain. A strange pattern appeared. It didn't match any known structure. It was shaped like a double spiral that branched and pulsed like a living map. And I scanned it again and again. The machine kept giving him the same result. This gene was dormant but alive. It didn't activate with heat or cold or chemicals. It responded to emotion, love, grief, rage, forgiveness. The strand changed when the human who carried it felt deeply. It recorded those emotions. It remembered them, and slowly it grew stronger. And I backed away from the screen, whispering to himself, This is not evolution. This is design, or destiny. Just then, Commander Vril entered the lab, his silver-lined skin glowing slightly under the biolights. He noticed the tense look on Inara's face. "What did you find?" he asked. Inar looked up, eyes wide. Something terrifying and beautiful. Vril stepped closer. "Commander." Inar began slowly. "I collected DNA from a wide variety of humans from different places, different backgrounds, rich, poor, healthy, sick. And almost all of them carry this hidden strand, what I've named the awakening gene." Vril frowned. "Is it dangerous?" "That's the problem." And I replied, "It's not active in most of them. It sleeps. But when it wakes, it doesn't evolve them. It elevates them, not just physically but mentally. Their thoughts sharpen. Their emotions deepen. Their ability to influence energy, matter, even others begins to change." Vril stared at the floating image of the DNA strand. "You're saying these humans could become something more?" Inar nodded. "Not all of them, not yet, but some already have. Quietly, in the shadows. They are not gods, Commander, but they are the seed of gods." There was a long silence in the lab. The only sound came from the soft hum of the machines. "Do they know?" Vril asked finally. "No." Inar replied, "Not fully. Some feel it through dreams, art, pain. Some break under it. Others rise. And when one rises, something strange happens. It spreads, not through blood but through action. One human showing kindness in darkness causes another to feel hope. That hope touches another, and then another, until something ancient starts to glow inside them." Vril narrowed his eyes. "This awakening gene, have you seen it before?" Inar hesitated. "Yes, once." Vril turned sharply. "Where?" "In the ruins of the Zalari ascendants, a species so powerful they bent time with thought. We found their bones on the edge of a dying galaxy. They had the same gene, but theirs burned fast. It consumed them." Vril took a step back. "So Earth is repeating the cycle." Inar shook his head. "No, Commander, it's doing something new. The Zalari woke too quickly. The humans, they are teaching each other how to rise slowly, through suffering, through learning, through stories and songs and silent acts of courage." Vril looked back at the image of Earth. So small, so fragile, but also, Inar added, they are unstable, violent, selfish. If the awakening happens too fast, they could destroy themselves or the galaxy. The weight of that truth settled over the room like ice. Vril finally spoke. "That we must stop them?" "No," Inar said quietly. "We must protect them from themselves and from others. If word spreads of this gene, other species will come, not to help but to steal, to weaponize, to erase. Earth must be hidden, not because it is dangerous, but because it is sacred." Vril frowned. "So what do? We observe." Inar said, "We record. We ensure no outside influence touches them, not until they are ready." Vril nodded slowly, though he didn't fully understand. He had seen worlds with power before, but this was something deeper, something beyond power, something that whispered of fate. As he left the lab, Inar turned to the DNA screen one last time. The awakening gene pulsed gently, and for just a moment, so fast the system barely caught it, it glowed in the shape of a hand reaching out. A single human ends a galactic war by mistake, the war between the Clovic Empire and the Dravari Union had lasted over 160 Earth years. Countless systems had been scorched, moons split in half, and stars left flickering under the weight of unending conflict. These were two of the oldest spacefaring species in the quadrant, powerful, proud, and unwilling to back down. Each side believed the other was a threat to galactic balance. Every attempt at peace had failed. Ambassadors were vaporized. Treaties were turned into ashes. Neutral planets became battlefields overnight. No species dared interfere anymore, except someone accidentally did. Back aboard the Earth observation ship Shelter 7. The crew had just begun decoding more human cultural files when a loud chime rang across the bridge. The technician, Soren, frowned and tapped his screen. "Commander, Vrol," he called. "You need to see this." Vrol stepped forward calmly. "What is it?" "Our long-range surveillance drones picked up something strange." A signal broadcast entered the Chlorvic-Dravari conflict zone. Vrol's expression darkened. "A weapon? No, sir. A song." That single word made the entire crew pause. "A song?" repeated Dr. Inar from behind. "From who?" Soren brought up the screen. "Earth." The image zoomed in on a small, box-like satellite launched from Earth almost a decade ago. It was old, outdated tech, covered in dents and space dust. On its side was a gold-plated message written in over a dozen languages. It was one of the Voyager probe's primitive and slow, forgotten by most humans. But this one had drifted far, too far. Somehow, pulled by gravitational chaos, it had wandered straight into the no-fly zone between the two warring species. Its signal repeated on a loop, over and over. It wasn't a threat, or a warning, or even a cry for help. It was Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, Ode to Joy, raw, pure, human, a wave of emotional music traveling through the darkest battlefield in the stars. For 12 minutes, neither the Chlorvic nor the Dravari forces fired a single shot. At first, they thought it was a trick, some sort of frequency bomb. But when they scanned the satellite, they found no weapons, no commands, just music, just harmony. And then, something happened that had never happened in over a century of bloodshed. A Chlorvic pilot deactivated her weapons. She stared at her console, trembling. The music reminded her of her childhood, though she had never heard it before. The rhythm touched something buried deep in her forgotten kindness, a warmth she hadn't felt in decades. On the other side, a Dravari soldier, old and battle-scarred, shut off his engine and simply listened. He closed his eyes and wept out within moments. Ships on both sides began halting fire. Missiles returned to base. Plasma cannons cooled. Pilots in distant corners of space held their breath, wondering what they were hearing and why they suddenly felt less angry. The human song reached across languages, across species, across galaxies, and did what diplomats could not. It created pause. Not peace, not yet, but silence, and then war. Silence is the loudest miracle. Back on Shelter 7, the crew watched in disbelief. Vrol's voice was low and sharp. "Play it again. Translate the lyrics." Soren brought up the ancient human text. "Joy, beautiful spark of the gods. All men become brothers, where thy gentle wing abides." Dr. Inar's face turned pale. "They sing as if they remember something older than their species." Vrol folded his arms. "This was never meant as a weapon. It was a message, a gift, and it ended a war. Riltek, the second in command, muttered, "By mistake." Inar shook his head. "No, that's the terrifying part. Humans send things into space blindly out of hope, out of curiosity, out of love. But those emotions carry power. This wasn't designed to do anything. It just was. And that was enough." The technician turned again. "Sir, the Galactic Conflict Council is requesting analysis. They want to know if this was some kind of psychic warfare." Vrol didn't answer. He stepped toward the viewing glass and looked down at Earth. Still spinning gently in the dark, they ended a galactic war, he said softly, without even knowing it happened. The realization struck everyone like a wave. This was not just luck, not a coincidence. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't just science or firepower. It was the accidental beauty they created even while struggling to survive. It was a species capable of lighting candles in the deepest void, and those lights traveled farther than they ever expected. Vrol turned and gave the command. "From now on, Earth is to be placed under level 1 watch. No contact, no influence, no interference. We let them grow, or we risk breaking what we don't understand and are not in agreement. They're not ready, but they're rising. and as the music continued to echo across battle-scarred star systems, the Clovic and Dravari began opening a communication channel. For the first time in generations, all because one human song refused to stay silent in the stars. The myth of the silent flame child long before the crew of Zhelter 7 arrived. Stories had already begun to spread across Earth, stories that scientists dismissed, governments ignored, and even many humans laughed off. But among the shadows and whispers, one tale refused to fade. It traveled from villages to cities, from mouths of elders to the ears of children, told quietly at night as if even the stars might be listening. They called it the myth of the silent flame. The alien crew first heard it by accident. Dr. Anar had tapped into human encrypted data lines to study emotional speech patterns. He expected government reports or military channels. Instead, he stumbled upon a forgotten local broadcast from a remote village in southern India. The video was grainy, filmed on a shaky phone, and barely translated by the eye. But what it showed was impossible. The recording showed a boy, no older than 6, standing in the middle of a dirt path during a thunderstorm. Lightning cracked above his head. The wind howled, trees bent sideways. People screamed and ran for shelter, but the child didn't move. He just stood there barefoot, silent, untouched by the rain. A bolt of lightning struck a metal tower behind him. Instead of panicking, the child raised one hand, and the fire simply stopped. The flame froze midair, flickering in place like a golden ribbon in water, and then it vanished. The recording ended in static. Dr. Anar stared at the screen in silence for several minutes. Then he played it again and again. The instruments on the ship detected no visual tampering, no human-made tricks. He marked the location and requested immediate probe surveillance. Within hours, Zhelter 7 dispatched a nano-drone to hover invisibly above the area. The probe picked up a local schoolteacher talking to a group of children. She pointed to a small hill in the distance and spoke in soft Hindi. The translation came through. He was born during the night when the skies wept fire. He did not cry once. His mother says he hasn't aged since. No fever, no wounds, no hunger, and he talks to animals, not to people. The children listen. Why-I. One child whispered, "Is he still alive?" The teacher only nodded and said, "He walks under the sun, but carries the moon in his eyes." Dr. Anar immediately ordered full bioscans of the region. What the ship recorded shocked everyone. The soil around the child's village had unusual magnetic pulses. The local plants were photosynthesizing at 300% the normal rate. Several local dogs had synchronized heartbeats matching a single human pattern. And the child's M signature was unlike anything in Earth's registry. It wasn't high. It was precise, a frequency not seen in any other human. It was as if he was tuned to something else. When Anar showed the data to Commander Vril, the usually composed officer took a long moment before speaking. "He's not an accident," Vril finally said. "He's a signpost." Riltek frowned. "Of what?" Vril stepped to the viewing panel. "Something is moving beneath the surface of humanity. Not physically, spiritually. This child is not a god, but he may be one of their first voices." More drone footage arrived. It showed the boy walking calmly through the village. Birds followed him in the sky. Stray animals gathered near his steps. Old men bowed. Young mothers hid their eyes as he passed, as if instinctively reverent. No one spoke to him, and he never spoke back, but he always smiled. At one point, a wounded horse collapsed on the roadside. The child walked over, placed one hand on its side, and stood quietly for almost a full minute. The horse, breathing hard, let out one final sigh and then got up, uninjured. Back aboard the ship, Anar adjusted his theory. This is no mutation. This is emergence. Some humans are waking before the rest. Slowly, quietly, and when they awaken, they bring the world with them. Vril considered the implications. Do the humans know what he is? No, Anar replied. They feel it. They respect it. But they don't understand it. Not yet. There was a pause. Then Vril said something unexpected. Do we? The question hung in the air longer than it should have, because the truth was they didn't. This child, this silent flame, was more than a legend. He was proof that Earth's potential was not theoretical. It was growing, walking, breathing, healing, and smiling in the dirt roads of forgotten lands. And if this was just one child, how many others were there? How many more were already listening to the stars? How many already dreamed beyond the sky, at the edge of the village? The drone caught one final image. The child stood at the base of a banyan tree, looking up at the sky. The clouds shifted above. A single ray of light broke through, and for a brief moment, his eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the exact same light patterns seen in the awakening gene under a microscope. Back on Joltor 7, Inar whispered to himself, "The gods are not coming. They're being born." The broken planet that refused to de-ship Joltor 7 had orbited dozens of so-called dead planets. Some were burned by their own suns. Others were swallowed by greed, war, or natural disaster. But all of them had one thing in common: they gave up. Their dominant species either vanished, destroyed themselves, or retreated underground until time forgot them. But Earth was different. Commander Vo watched the data feeds in stunned silence. His crew had spent weeks observing disasters, wars, and collapses on this single world, and yet, no matter what happened, humans always came back. They didn't just survive. They refused to surrender. "Watch this," Dr. Inar said, bringing up a sequence of satellite footage. This region, he pointed, was flattened by a massive earthquake. Thousands died. Cities crumbled, and yet within days, people came together, not to fight, but to help. Strangers carried bricks, children passed buckets of water, old women made food for rescue workers. No leadership, no order, just instinct. Vrol narrowed his eyes, and the other regions? Inar tapped again. Another feed appeared, a coastline battered by tsunamis, boats shattered, homes gone, but there were humans swimming into the waves, dragging others to safety. One man, injured and bleeding, used his body as a raft for a child. He did not survive. The child did. No reward. Inar said softly, "No camera." He just did it. The crew was silent. The ship's historian, Jorel, entered the room with ancient scrolls of human digital history. Her voice, always calm, now carried a note of awe. "Commander, I traced Earth's largest catastrophes, plagues, global wars, climate events, meteor strikes. Every other species we've studied would have fallen under such strain. Humans, they collapse and then rebuild stronger. They don't fear destruction. They learn from it." She paused, scrolling through images of rebuilt cities, new gardens on old battlegrounds, children playing in places that once held fire and blood. They plant roses in ruins. She whispered. Vrol watched as humans protested in the streets, not for violence, but for peace. He saw them build schools from the bricks of collapsed homes. He watched a man teach math to children under a tree where a classroom used to be. The most powerful scene was simple: a girl in a hijab helping an old man in a yarmulke across a destroyed road, both smiling. Reltek entered the chamber holding a sensor tablet. "Sir, may I speak freely?" Vrol nodded. "I ran simulations. Earth should be gone. Its oceans poisoned, its atmosphere unstable. But life continues, because the humans adapt faster than collapse itself. When they lose land, they build boats. When they lose homes, they make tents. When they lose people, they raise their voices louder." Inar added, "There's a phrase I keep finding in their literature. It keeps showing up in the darkest times. We rise." The commander turned to the massive window overlooking Earth. Clouds curled softly around the surface. Lightning flickered over the Atlantic. Fires burned in one continent, while another celebrated a festival of lights. "There is no balance," he said. "Only extremes." Inar stepped beside him. "Perhaps that's why they're still here. They are fire and water, sorrow and song. They don't need balance. They carry both." Suddenly, an alert rang out on the deck. Soren, the technician, turned from his console. "Sir, we've received a planetary emergency alert. A missile was accidentally launched toward a civilian area." Everyone on the bridge went still. "Casualties?" Vrol asked quickly. Soren frowned. "None. Yet." "Sir, a human teacher spotted the missile trail from the schoolyard. She only had seconds. She told the children to lie down and shielded. Then with her body," Vrol closed his eyes. Soren continued, "But the missile didn't land. A maintenance worker nearby saw it too. He used a service drone to reroute its signal. It crashed into a barren hillside instead. The school was saved." A sigh of relief passed through the crew. "Do they know who the man is?" Reltek asked. Soren nodded. "His name was Yusuf. He died in the impact zone. He stayed with the drone till the last second." Inar whispered, "One man saved a school with a tool meant to fix pipes." The bridge was quiet once again, and then Commander Vrol gave a new entry to the ship's archive. File name, planet Earth status, technologically fragile, spiritually evolving galactic threat level, high galactic hope index, higher classification, broken but breathing, species, fragile but furious, recommended action, observe, do not interfere, reason, they are still choosing what they want to become. As Earth turned beneath them, glowing half in light and half in night, the crew watched something extraordinary. A group of children were planting a tree over the grave of a man they never met. First contact, but only one child noticed. The crew of Gielter 7 had strict orders. No interference, no communication, no contact. Commander Vo followed the protocol without question. Earth, with all its chaos and beauty, was not ready. Its species, unpredictable and emotional, could misunderstand even a peaceful signal as a threat. So they watched from above, silently recording, silently learning. But some questions could not be answered from orbit, and one crew member broke the rules. His name was Velinus, a young observer born in the cold moons of Eraska, curious, gentle, and always silent in crew discussions. Velinus had spent most of his time studying human behavior through their art, music, and small gestures. He became fascinated with their contradictions, the way they wept at music, laughed during hardship, and chose kindness even when it cost them everything. Commander, Velinus once asked softly, how can they feel so much pain and still keep loving? Ro didn't answer. He didn't know. That question echoed in Velinus' mind for weeks, until one quiet evening, he made a choice. Using a stealth pod no larger than a chair, he descended into Earth's atmosphere without approval. His destination was not a capital city or a scientific center. It was a remote, forgotten village in Peru, a place where no satellites flew, where no one watched the stars. He took human form using the ship's morphic technology, appearing as a tall, quiet man with soft features and dark eyes. He wore no badge, no name tag, no shoes, just plain clothes and silence. He walked into the village at dawn. Humans looked at him, curious but unafraid. In many parts of the world, strangers were still welcomed, offered food, shelter, a place by the fire. This place was one of them. A woman handed him bread without asking who he was. A boy pointed to a place to sit. A dog rested beside him as if they were old friends. Velinus didn't speak. He only watched and felt. That night, he sat near the river, listening to insects sing. He stared at the stars, the same stars from above, but different, here closer somehow, softer, like they could hear him. And then, a voice behind him. You're not from here. Velinus turned slowly. A little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, stood barefoot on the grass, holding a carved wooden doll. Her hair was messy, and her eyes were large to large. They shimmered like the river under moonlight. Velinus smiled gently. Why do you say that? She shrugged. You don't blink right. He blinked twice. Better. She giggled. Still weird. He tilted his head. You aren't afraid. She sat beside him. Why would I be? Velinus hesitated. Because I'm different. The girl leaned her head on her knees. Everyone is different. That's what makes Earth fun. He studied her face. Her heartbeat was calm, her breath steady. But her neural signature, if he had a scanner, would have revealed something extraordinary. This child, like the silent flame boy, had something rare. Awareness without fear. I have a question, she said suddenly. Do you have rivers where you come from? No. Velinus replied honestly, only ice. She looked sad. Then I hope you stay here. Velinus paused. Why? She looked at the sky. Because you look lonely, and lonely people don't talk to rivers. Something deep inside Velinus shifted. For the first time in his life, he felt small, not in fear, but in humility. Here was a child with no title, no education, no power, and yet she saw him completely and accepted him. I have to leave soon, Velinus said softly. She nodded. I know. How? He asked. I dreamed you'd come. Just once. Just a look. Then you go back where it's cold. But you'll remember me forever. Velinus stared at her. She smiled. You don't need to say anything. Just don't forget. The next morning, he left. The pod rose quietly, vanishing into the mist. The village never noticed. No record was made. No photos taken, except one. Drawing the girl had made it before dawn. It showed a tall man beside a river, and stars shaped like a smile above them. Back aboard Gielter 7. Velinus stood before the commander. You disobeyed orders, Vril said sternly. Yes. Velenas replied. I did. You risked exposure. I stayed hidden. You made contact. Velenas paused. No, sir. She made contact. The room fell silent. Vril studied him. What did you learn? Velenas looked out the window. That we are not the Watchers. Not anymore. Vril didn't understand. Velenas continued. She knew who I was. She saw me. She didn't need proof. She didn't ask questions. She just understood. No fear. No demand. Only acceptance. Dr. Anar, who had overheard the exchange, stepped forward. Another anomaly. No, Velenas said. Not an anomaly. A beginning. That night, Velenas entered a final report in the crew's observation log. Birth. Stage unknown. First contact status. Technically unmade emotional impact. High notable quote from human child. Lonely people don't talk to rivers. Recommendation. Protect the unseen. Guard the small. They are the first to awaken. As the ship floated above the planet, the girl in the village looked up once again. She waved toward the sky, and Velenas, somewhere above, smiled. Earth's true name in the Galactic Codex stars above Earth no longer shimmered in silence. They now carried a memory unseen by the humans below, but etched forever in the minds of those who had watched from afar. From the cold halls of the Shelter 7, the alien crew had witnessed a truth they could neither explain nor ignore. This planet so broken, so wild, so unready was not just evolving, it was becoming. Commander Vril stood at the main terminal, his hands resting on the ancient metal of the archive core. Behind him, the bridge was quiet. All eyes were on the final report. The moment had come to assign Earth its permanent galactic classification, a title that would echo across sectors, informing every future species that might wander near this strange blue world. Dr. Anar, Velenas, Riltek, Soren, and the rest of the crew had gathered, not because it was protocol, but because they felt it. Something about this planet demanded witnesses. We've seen it destroy, Vril said, voice steady. We've seen it heal. We've seen it cry in silence and laugh in pain. But above all, we've seen it refuse to stop. The room nodded. Dr. Anar stepped forward. The awakening gene is active in at least 4% of the population. The rest are slowly responding. One act of selflessness lights another. Their evolution is not biological anymore, it's emotional, spiritual. Velenas added quietly. They do not know the power they carry, but they pass it anyway. Vril looked up at the massive display. Earth rotated slowly, half covered in storm clouds, half in golden sunlight. A world of opposites. Fire and frost, rage and grace, but alive. And still rising. Riltek tapped a key, and the screen displayed the suggested names from the archives. Death World Class 15 Planetary, Instability Zone Awakening Origin, Sector Cradle 3 Hybrid. Classification. Vril shook his head. No, he said simply, none of those are true. Everyone turned. This world, Vril continued, is not a mistake. It is not a warning. It is not even a hope. He looked around the room. It is a beginning. A hush fell over the bridge. Vril reached forward and typed slowly into the command console. Galactic designation. Seaworld 0. Gasps filled the room. Sir, Anar whispered. You gave it 0. Origin number. Vril nodded. Because this world is not just evolving. It's rewriting the idea of what evolution is. Every emotion, every choice, every failure, every act of compassion, it all grows something new. Not faster ships, not better weapons, better souls. He turned to Velenas. What did she say again? Velenas smiled. Lonely people don't talk to rivers. Vril's voice softened. And yet they do. Humans speak to rivers. They sing to the moon. They write poems to the wind. They mourn strangers. They plant flowers on graves they never dug. They bleed for cousins they'll never see finished. They dream beyond the stars, even when they don't have shoes. He tapped one final command. Classification notes. SeaWorld 0. First known emotional catalyst planet. Species capable of conscious interconnected growth. Status, untouchable. Do not invade. Do not interfere. Observe in silence. Protect from afar. And then he added one more line. Alternate designation human defined. Planet Earth. Known among observers as the Cradle of Becoming. The lights dimmed. It was done. The report would be sent across the hidden lattice of galactic archives, places older than suns, where time itself bowed to memory. The message would reach others, the thinkers in the crystal, cities of ether, the weavers of light on the moons of Mar, even the dreamkeepers of the silent spiral, and all of them would know there is a planet at the edge of a quiet arm of a spiral galaxy, a fragile world of dust and storms, but it holds something no other place does, the raw material of gods. As Gielter 7 prepared to leave orbit, the crew gathered for one last view. Earth glowed below, oceans moving, lights flickering, winds dancing across deserts and mountain tops, and then, something unexpected. On a quiet beach in Chile, a boy stood with a mirror, reflecting sunlight upward. He wasn't aiming for anything in particular. He was just playing, just curious. But that light caught the ship's lower hull dot, and for a second, it shined directly into the viewing deck. Fro blinked, Inner stared. Realtek whispered, Did he just wave? Velena smiled. No, he just reminded us they're already reaching back, and far above, the ship turned its engines toward the stars. But no one on board felt like they were leaving, because once Earth touches you, truly touches you, you never really go back to who you were. You carry its fire. You carry its contradiction. You carry its question. What will you become?